Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. We finally got some ASUS BTF stuff here to check out. Today we're going to take a little bit of a look at the brand new ASUS Z790 BTF Wi-Fi. This is one of the TUF boards, and if you don't know what BTF is, it means all of the connectors for the motherboard are on the back side, which means no cables, if we're lucky. All right, let's take a bit of a closer look. But as usual with our motherboard content, these videos are not reviews, they're just overviews so we can take a bit of a closer look at what makes this board tick. Let's dive in. Here it is, ladies and gents, we've finally got it. This is the ASUS TUF Gaming Z790 BTF Wi-Fi. What does BTF stand for? Well, I'll let you guys come up with that one on your own. But basically, this is a motherboard from ASUS with back connectors. That's right, the connectors on the back side of the board, so we don't need to have any ugly cables in our systems. How good is that? Okay, first of all, let's take a look at what we got in here. We've got a SATA or SATA cable for your 2.5-inch SSDs, all those spinning rush drives. Next, we've got the quick start guide that basically explains how to not break things and how to install a CPU and do all of the things that make sense when building a PC. However, it also has a bit of a bottom guide to explain what all the connectors are on the backside, because it may look a bit unusual if you've never seen a back connector board. I mean, if you're buying something like this, you know what you're getting into most of the time, but haven't we been through this, guys? Why do we still have these? We don't need this. No, just give us a USB stick, come on. I always found this really funny with ASUS boards, a certificate of reliability. Why do we need this? Did someone sit down and test all of this stuff, or did they just print out a whole bunch of these and say, hey, this is going to be reliable? Look guys, I know you say this is a certificate of reliability, but can we really trust this thing? I don't know. There's probably like 100,000 on a pile and they just do it. At least have someone sign it, right? We've got a bunch of TUF stickers in case you wanted some stickers for your TUF motherboard. How about that for a slogan though, right? Get tough, game tough. Extra points for anyone out there who knows what TUF stands for, if you're old enough. All right, we're getting closer to the fun stuff, and you know how I love fun stuff. Got some M.2 doodads, we've got a standoff and a screw, and just some pads to insulate your M.2 drive from your motherboard. Also, we've got an antenna for the built-in Wi-Fi 7. That's right, 7 is better than 6. And 7 is also better than 6E. It's okay guys, we learned to count the other day. Remember, we did a video counting to 11. And now we can at least count to 11, we could probably count to 7. Fun time. It's the pizza of resistance. Maybe pepperoni, maybe Hawaiian. I like pizza with pineapple, I'm just gonna put that out there. People who don't like pineapple on their pizza are just weird to me and we can't be friends. Right, slide her out. Here we go, ladies and gents, fully unsheathed, as all good things should be. If you're not sure what BTF boards are, essentially they're motherboards with all of the cable connectors taken off the front of the board. So you will need a specialized case to allow you to use a board like this in a case, because obviously there needs to be cutouts on the back side of the motherboard for all the cables to be plugged in. The only part of power delivery on the top side of the board, and this is what makes the ASUS board special, is power delivery for your graphics card. So instead of having an ugly 12-volt high power cable, if you're using an NVIDIA card, it's not NVIDIA, it's NVIDIA, it plugs in right there. And if we flip it over, you'll see that all the connectors are quite literally on the back, hence the B in BTF. I don't understand what the T and F stands for. Let's take a closer look at all these connectors so you can get a bit of an understanding about what it all is and what it all means to you and whether or not it's something that you might find interesting. Now, the truth is, with the whole BTF thing, I invented this in my head probably like 15 years ago, and they were reading my mind. Look at me, I'm a genius. The difference is the version that I invented in my head had a back plane in the case that all of the stuff on the back would connect to, rather than you just doing it yourself. So I mean, this is probably a better way of doing it, but a backplane would be cool because, yeah, ultimate nerd things. Backplanes are for the cool kids. First up, we've got our front panel connector for all your lights and all your switches to let you know your system's up and running. We've then got 4 SATA or SATA ports for your 2.5-inch SSDs or your spinning rush drives. We've then got 2 PWM fan headers for your fans. There's 2 USB 2.0 front panel headers as well. These are typically used for liquid coolers and RGB controllers these days. There's no real use other than that. There's also 2 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB headers, and I think there's a Thunderbolt header behind that as well. There's another PWM fan header, and there's also the front panel audio header right up the end there. Top to bottom on the right hand edge of the board, there's 2 more RGB headers. There's a 24-pin power connector. There's the USB Type-C front panel connector. There's also a USB Type-A 3.2 front panel connector. This is where this board begins to get interesting. There's a 12-volt high power connector and 3 8-pin PCIe power connectors. You can use either a 12-volt high power connector for your graphics card or 3 PCIe power connectors. There's also 2 EPS power connectors to send juice to your brand new 14th gen CPU. As well as that, there's 3 PWM fan headers on the top of the board. But this is something that I found quite strange on this board. Are you ready for this? There's a PWM fan header on the top. I thought the BTF stood for back to front. Come on, guys. Put that on the back as well. In terms of PCIe slots, there's one full-size by 16 PCIe 5.0 slot. There's another by 16 size PCIe slot down the bottom, but both of the rest of the slots are PCIe 4.0 by 4. Here's what sets apart the BTF boards compared to other back connector motherboards: the graphics card power connector on the board. You can see it here. Basically, the GPU plugs straight into this and it powers itself from the motherboard without the need for any other cables. There's also this really nice latch to release the card from the top slot as well. And here is a BTF graphics card. This is a 4070 Ti Super. You can see the power connectors on this edge connector here. And there's no 12-volt high power connector on the graphics card whatsoever. They've just removed that on the PCB. And slotting this into the slot, you can see that the power connector edge connector goes in first, and then the PCIe edge connector will slot in right after that. But yeah, it goes in very, very easily. In terms of power delivery, this features a 16+1+1 phase Dr. Moss VRM layout with 60 amp power stages. I'll show you this in a moment, but this is the same heatsink layout that we find on the Z790 TUF Pro. You can see these heatsinks are more than adequate for power delivery for a motherboard like this, so you know, nothing too exciting. Because this is an LGA 1700 motherboard, it will support 12th gen, 13th gen, and 14th gen Intel CPUs right out of the box. Now let's take a look at the back again, just as a whole, just to give you a bit of a look at what is going on here. See? Back connectors, BTF, back to front. That's what it means. I figured that out when I was doing the voiceover. Now, this board supports 4 DDR5 RAM modules with a total of 192 gigs of RAM, up to 7200 mega transfers. All right, let's get the heat sinks off so we can take a little bit of a look at the M.2 layout on this board. It's got a couple M.2 slots. They have 4 PCIe 4.0 by 4 M.2 slots. There's one at the top and there's 3 at the bottom of the board. This is the one in the middle, and then there's 2 more slots right at the bottom. In terms of rear I/O, we've got a DisplayPort connector for your integrated graphics. We've got HDMI, 2 5GB USB 3.2 ports, a 20GB USB Type-C port, some more 5GB USB Type-A ports, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, as well as some more USB. There's also a 10GB USB Type-C port. There's antenna connectors for the built-in Wi-Fi 7, as well as jacks for the entire audio interface, including optical out. Okay, let's do a little bit of a cinematic too, right? I was thinking about this board that I hadn't used yet. I've got the Z790 Pro Wi-Fi. It's also a TUF board. It's been sitting on the shelf for such a long time, and to be honest, I forgot that I had it. So I wanted to show you guys kind of a comparison between these two, because at first glance they look completely different, but when we look a bit closer we can see that they share a lot of the same components on the PCB itself. So let's take a look at these capacitors, for instance, here along the edge of the socket. On the TUF Pro and the BTF board, you can see that they're exactly the same in the same location, as well as little things like around the socket. We've got another capacitor here, another one here, both exactly the same. But it gets a bit more interesting, and maybe you might not be able to see this on camera, but we've got some more components here and here that are in the same place, and they're the same component, and basically the BTF board covers a lot of that with this plastic cover here. And other small things as well, like this ASMedia USB controller, that's right here. You can also see that it's on the BTF board in exactly the same place. Mainly the thing that you'll notice is there's 2 extra PCIe slots, and essentially that's because they replaced that with M.2 slots on this board, because they do use the same technology. Even other details like the heat sinks for the VRM are exactly the same on both of these boards. One's silver and one's black, but they're exactly the same. There's so many other little things as well, like you probably can't see it from this angle, but there's a lot of surface mounts that are here just underneath the heatsink that are exactly the same on the Z790 Pro Wi-Fi. And I don't think this is an issue, because that's basically what they do. They'll design one PCB and they'll just run with it. They'll get a PCB design from a board that they've already got. They'll iterate on it enough for it to be different, to fix some issues they could have had with signaling and that kind of stuff. And essentially, they solder the connectors to the backside of the board. So all of these components and all these connectors are through hole, and yeah, they would literally just flip them over and solder them on the other side. So I think that's the most simple way to explain it, but it's not quite that simple, because when you flip over components, you're actually reversing the polarity on a lot of the stuff too. So you'd have to have different traces, and these boards are like, whatever, like 7 layer or whatever they are, and they have traces underneath each layer as well. So all of that would have to be different, but that's why you'll notice some components will be different as well, because yeah, they've probably done some type of iteration to fix signaling issues, but essentially these boards are the same. Something else I thought was pretty interesting that you might not even think about, but the rear I/O on the Z790 Pro Wi-Fi is the same layout, but that doesn't mean that it's exactly the same. The main difference here is, yep, layout's the same, but the 20 gig USB Type-C port and the 10 gig port are flipped around on this. As well as that, the BTF board has Wi-Fi 7 and this has Wi-Fi 6E. But other than that, I wouldn't blame you for saying that these are exactly the same. Even the TUF logo is the same, it's inverted. So, all right, I hope you enjoyed this bit of an overview of all this BTF stuff, or what we've got so far. Now, in terms of the comments people are going to make about Project Zero compared to BTF, now I know this isn't a review or whatever, but I do have some comments on them. The first thing is, I think the BTF stuff is better for one huge reason, and that's because the power connector for the graphics card is on the board itself. So if we take a look at the card, which I've already shown in the video, you can see here again, there's no power connector, so there's no 12-volt high power for these 40 series cards. It's directly on the card itself, and it just slots in and Bob's your dad's uncle's cousin's brother, and you don't have to worry about any cables. One thing I did think was a little bit strange, and I think I probably mentioned this in the video, that there's a single CPU fan header on the top side of the board. You could just not use that, or just not have it there. It's just so odd that ASUS has decided to put that there, but you know, it is what it is. As for how I think back connector boards are going to go in the future, we've done quite a few videos about this already, and I think the future is looking pretty bright. People like me who don't care about looks, who care about functionality, but care enough about looks to not want to see cables, I think this really appeals to people like that. And I said this when we checked out the Project Zero stuff too, because I think this is going to be very popular. And at Computex this year, which is only in a couple of weeks, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to see our Computex coverage, I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more back connector boards from MSI and ASUS, but not just from them. I think Gigabyte and ASRock and maybe even BioStar might have some boards that feature this kind of stuff. The thing is as well, I think Gigabyte was the first to do this before everyone, and people basically just shat on the idea. The execution was pretty weird for the Gigabyte version of it, but now that it's kind of been standardized with connectors in the same place for all motherboard vendors, yeah, that's what I can see will make this more popular than it was with the Gigabyte. What was it called? I forgot what the Gigabyte one was called. That's how memorable it was. In fact, when Gigabyte said, hey, do you guys want to check this out? I was like, no, I wasn't interested at all. But now it's looking like it's going to be something very, very cool. You can get this stuff yourself already. It is on sale. If you're looking at buying the Z790 BTF board, they're going for around about 590 Aussie dollars, and whatever US Freedom Credit number is on your screen right now. Do I think that is too expensive for a board like this? Well, the truth is, I don't know. There's not really that much to compare it to. Yeah, I get that motherboards and Z790 boards already have a median price, but this is just different. So I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what the trend is gonna be with back connector boards. But from what I can tell so far, it's about the same as normal motherboards, and everything is expensive at the moment anyway. And I think if you're really looking at buying a board like this, maybe go to the grocery store and buy some food, because cost of living is way more important than a back connector motherboard right now, if I'm being absolutely honest. But the idea is pretty freaking cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff from all the motherboard vendors over the next couple of weeks at Computex. Yay! And if you like the music you heard here, it's me. I make all the music. It's available by clicking that join button right down there down below. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. Hope you enjoyed it. You peek, we seek, and yeah, I think the back connector stuff is going to be really cool. It's going to be really fun. Hopefully we see lots of cases this year that support it more. There's so much like hit and miss when it comes to support. I think I mentioned this in the Montech Sky 2 GX review. That maybe, no, it wasn't that one, was it? That doesn't have back connector support, does it? Does it? No, it doesn't. What was the other one that we did the other week? The one before, what was it? Antec. It was Antec, the Antec C5. That had back connector support for MATX as well. And I think that is one thing that is missing from a lot of the cases. Hopefully at Computex, people have listened to what I've said over the last couple of months and just done the thing. Thanks for watching. I'm out of here. It's like 7 p.m. on a Friday night. And this video is probably going out in like 2 hours after me filming this bit. It's crazy. I need to just chill out. Catch you later. Watch one of the videos over here somewhere. Like here. Hold focus here. Come on. Why are you not doing? You're supposed to be good at this. I don't like autofocus. This is why I hate it. Because like even on a good camera,